We can start off the program.
Afternoon, a very good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to 12th Water Tech Talk. It's almost a year since when Water Tech Talk series has also started, and I'm glad to be a part of this program, which is being organized by National Water Mission, Ministry of Jal Shakti, in partnership with Water Digest. Before we start the program, I'm Anupma, the director and editor of Water Digest. And like every second Friday of the month, I would like to host you today for this very special Water Tech Talk. Today's day is an auspicious one as it is Ganesh Chaturthi. So, first of all, wishing everyone happy Ganesh Chaturthi. And let's pledge to keep our waters clean on this auspicious occasion. And I'm sure there are a lot of initiatives which are happening all across India, even on the occasion of Ganesh Chaturthi, when we are moving towards the environment and eco-friendly Ganesh Murti as well. So let's hope with all positivities we start this program. And today's Water Talk is on a very special and important topic, which is data. We all have been talking about availability of data, sharing of data, and that's where this specific topic has been chosen. So the topic for today is sharing data to share water. The talk will be delivered by Dr. Sumit Sen, who is a senior scientist, Advanced Lab for Geographic Information Sciences, IIT Bombay. Welcome, Dr. Sen. And like always, we have with us Mr. G. Ashok Kumar, Additional Secretary and Mission Director, National Water Mission, who is an integral part of these Water Talk and Water Tech Talk series. And in fact, after Water Talk, he incepted this idea of doing Water Tech Talk also. And without further ado, now I invite Shri Ashokji to kindly propose your welcome address and also about the chosen topic today, along with the chosen speaker today. Over to you, Ashokji.
Thank you, Anuma. Uh, Wishing all the viewers and participants happy Ganesh Chaturthi, and I hope that pray to God that He will remove the obstructions. And I've been facing a lot of obstruction in the data side, and hopefully that will all be cleared by Him today. As Anupama mentioned, Water Tech Talk emerged from the water talks which we have been doing from the National Water Mission side. Almost 30 water talks are over now. And we provided a platform for the activists and the people who are the thick and thin of water management to express their views and also to showcase their works in the water talk. Then we found that there are much more things to be done in the water sector, particularly emerging technology, cutting edge technologies also has to be showcased to many of our participants because we have got very niche audience participating in our events and looking forward to our events. So we thought we should also help them provide with the latest available technology, cutting edge technology. And that's how the water talk emerged. And this is the 12th water talk. That means we have completed 1 year of our water tech talk. And we had been dealing with very, very diverse, very, very interesting topics from geomorphology and stratigraphy, influence in water depletion in the fill soils, learnings from Northern India by Dr. Rajiv Sharma, IIT professor from Kanpur, who was there, and also Dr. Pradeep, IIT Madras, who talks about harvesting humidity from water. We had from the IVL, Swedish Environment Research Institute, talking about the recycle of water. There's Indrashekar Sen, IIT Kanpur, paradigms in water quality monitoring, developed in-house developed technologies on quality monitoring. We also had Bahadur theory on oxidation technologies, TDAX, then also Ashwagosha, Manju, ice, water resources, sustenance in ecosystem, isotope applications, investigation in water management by Dr. Vishnu Kumar.
Ashok sir, your voice is not that audible.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, I request
Okay.
you to. Yeah.
So this very, very deep cutting-edge technologies were provided in our water tech talk. And now, but then very important is all the science and technology are evidence-based, are based on hardcore numbers. So the foundation of all the technology or the operating technology is numbers and data. And in scientific analysis of things and in a scientific environment, all decisions are taken not based on questions, but basically on hardcore data and the numbers. That is where today we thought on this 12th day, we look at a very fundamental aspect of technology, the data. And the technology in water is a very complex issue. I think water may be simple, but the technology in water, the data in water is very complex because many of the data on which the decisions are made are many times challenged. Many times they don't exist. We try to get some figures and try to do it. In fact, the goal number one of the National Water Mission was also to provide a platform for a common database for everybody. And now the government of India also has set up this WARIS and the organization and WIC to collect information from various sources and come into the platform. We have as a part of the Jal Shakti Abhiyan Catch the Rain campaign, when we are doing, we are trying to get the numbers from the various states on the number of water bodies available. And I found that many states have different databases which not get integrated one national database. We have technologies come up with geospatial satellite technology, imageries, etc. coming up. Again, different states have different parameters operating. So we are not able to get a very one interoperable system and as robust database for the entire country for making informed decisions. And as I said, with artificial intelligence coming up and machine learning all coming up in the technology forefront, numbers and data are very important. And we are looking at improving the water use efficiency from 20% by 20%, from where to where we don't know. These are all basic fundamental data problems are there. In fact, in the climate change issues also, in the NDCs also, many times and SDGs also, they have not really specified any numbers or quantitative targets for the water sector. It is there for carbon reduction, carbon emission reduction, and for probably increasing the renewable energy to non-renewable energy and all these things. But in the water sector, it says provide water for everybody or access to water to be improved, but no specific targets are given. So that's where the data is a very complex system in the water sector. And today we have a very important speaker with us, Dr. Sumit Sen, and he will be talking about various aspects of interoperability of data, then the various standards in the world, etc., and also in the geospatial context. So Dr. Sen is is a senior scientist in the Advanced Lab of Geographic Information Sciences and Engineering at the Department of Computer Science and Engineering in IIT Bombay. He's also a principal collaborator at the BM Stack and adjunct faculty at VJTI Mumbai. He completed his master's degree at City University London and worked as a researcher in IIT Bombay, and University of Manchester, Keio University, Chubu University, etc. Excuse me. His primary research domain has been spatial databases, analytics, and interoperability. He has published many papers on international journals and conferences on topics related to geospatial ontologies, data integration, spatial data infrastructures. So, as I said, this is probably one of the fundamental building block of the water management. Water management, as people say, if anything is not metered, it cannot be monitored. If anything is not monitored, efficiency cannot be improved. So when we are talking about increased water use efficiency or better water management, we need to have numbers. We need to have data. We need to have precise data in all sort of forms, in spatial technology, in numbers, and also requires interoperability from the data coming from various sources. So with that introduction, I hand it over to Dr. Sumit Sen for his talk on data sharing is sharing data to share water. Over to Dr. Sen.
Thank you so much, Ashokji. I mean, it couldn't have been a nicer introduction, and definitely the significance of sharing data related to water can never be undermined. I want to start by saying that I am in the GIC lab in IIT Bombay, and today is Ganesh Chaturthi. Bombay is more or less closed. So I will start with a little prayer for Ganeshji. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvigne Kurume Devo Sarvakareshu Samprabha. So with that, as my slides are up here, let me start by saying that we always speak about sharing data, and many times we speak about sharing water resources, water resources. But when we share data to share water, that is something unique, and I will explain why this is unique and why this is new. But again, there is another Sanskrit shlok which I wanted to say. Yatha jnanam vaya krute vradhat evam nityam tatha jala sanchanam krute sarva mangalyam vardhanam. So if we are sharing knowledge, of course it grows, and if we share water, the well-being of the community increases. So can we go to the next slide, please? So what I decided was, instead of speaking totally technical, I wanted to say some stories today. And so we will start with the story where we speak about how we share the earth, and hence we share water. And this has significance in earth observation that we will see. And the second point that we are going to do cover is the geospatial nature of water data. So I am going to wear two hats in terms of the interoperability or the standardization of data hat, and also the hat about geospatial engineering related to water. And I will speak about why water data sharing is relatively new, but it is, and hence it is unprecedented. But we see, as Shri Narendra Modi ji also said, we have to make a beginning, we have to start, and that is where water sharing, water data sharing is something that around the world we are seeing now, and I think India also must take a lead on that, and we will speak about that. Frameworks of interoperability, I will speak a little bit of what has been done, what are the things that we know, and what are the things that could be tried out. And in the next few slides, I will speak about 3 case studies that I have been personally associated with, and some learnings from those case studies. And finally, we will do some crystal gazing, or let's say trying to look up to the future of what is the path that we can take. And so let's start with the first topic, which is we share the earth, we share water. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the United Nations Sustainable Goal 6 has the 6 targets, as we know, and each of these targets are very specific, and I think we are all working towards them in our own ways. What I want you to identify or understand is that there are multiple organizations and hence thousands of people working on these topics. And if you go to the next slide, each of these targets correspond to some decision ready indicators or information. These are some indicators that have been identified, and if you see proportion of population using water, safely managed drinking water, so that's drinking water, then you have sanitation, then you have wastewater, water quality, water use, fresh water resources, integrated water resource management. So each of these are terms that cut across domains. So if I see drinking water, I have urban, rural, huge number of organizations there. Then you have sanitation. Those are again a large number of organizations that are involved in different kinds of sanitation utilities, wastewater, water quality. Oh, we went, can we go back? Okay, water quality, these are different people. So the pollution control boards, ranging to water quality or water quality auditors. So there are different organizations there. Then you have water use efficiency. So when we are looking at metering, I really appreciate the words of Ashok ji when he says what is not metered is not monitored. So definitely water use, and then the metering agency, monitoring agencies. Then you have fresh water resources. So there is the entire breadth of water resource departments across India. We work very closely with the water resource department in Maharashtra, and there are others. Each state has its own water resource department. Degree of integrated water resource. So integrated water resource management is a relatively new term. It comes in the context of watershed management, in terms of even catchment, catch the rain, for example. So this is another area where people have been working. Then you have the ecosystems, the ecology people. Then you have the budgetary people, so people making this plan. So now all these indicators already show you that water data is being used across domains, and it is relatively difficult to communicate in one voice, because each of these divisions, domains are very specialized in their own way. Okay, can we go to the next one? So not that United Nations Development Goals, only goal number 6 is relevant. Now we can appreciate that water is central, if not related. I would say this is central to hunger. Of course, if you want to have food, you need water. It is it is central to good health and well-being. It is central to decent work and economic growth. How would you have an environment where you don't have water? And so anybody who has worked with simulation of cities or games like Simula, city simulation games, you will know that if there is no water supply available, the city or the civilization is set to doom. Industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Without water, there is no industry. Sustainable cities and communities have water at the core of their development activities. Then there is responsible consumption and production. We speak about, what is the water consumption across India, and especially in urban and versus rural. We speak about other countries versus India, and we are very famously quoted everywhere that, our water consumption per capita is more sustainable than many other places. The climate action dialogues are also very keenly focused on water. Then, of course, we cannot speak about life below water without water. And of course, life on land, which is also sustained only by water. So all these are across domains, and hence water is a dialogue that is done in multiple languages. I'm not speaking about languages as in English, Hindi, Marathi, and so on. I'm speaking about languages that each of the domains speak, and hence their own vocabulary. So can we go on to the next slide? So now I also wanted to say that within, this is from a case study in Utah in the US, but this is everywhere. We will see that water is a local subject. It starts at the municipality or a local government level. It goes to a watershed or a region. Now, this distinction is very important, because within our lab also we have realized that you can't forego the natural boundaries of a water, which is the watershed region. and hence there are some administration, some activities that are done around that region. Then you go to the state level and the sectoral or the federal level. So, but if you understand the complexity dealing with this, not only we had the domains, but we have a regional players changing over places. And India, we have the additional, let's say, additional um, thing to cross, that is the language barriers, but we can get them done as well. But we have to recognize that integrating social and hydrological sciences for understanding water is challenged by water management complexities. But the key here is also that the answers to these challenges come from data management technologies. So that is something of an opportunity that we should not forget. Go to the next slide, please. So now let's focus a little bit on the geospatial nature of water data. And here we will speak about how it's not just variant spatially, but also variant spatio-temporally. Jalame kavidham sarvapatanyandra nabhastalat. That is, water falls almost the same everywhere. You know, the atmosphere is there. But tat patat patitam chaiva deshakala vipetnyate. So depending on time and place, it flows differently. Now, India has 17% of the world population, but only 4% of the world's freshwater reserves. Everybody says that. Precipitation, reservoirs, drainage, network, groundwater are all spatio-temporally heterogeneous, which means spatially, not only spatially, over time reservoirs, precipitation, groundwater, they change. So spatio-temporally. And consumption of water is also heterogeneous from different sources. So for example, some places groundwater, India is the greatest consumer of groundwater, for example. In Europe, there is a lot more consumption of what we call as surface water. In so, and then in the northern parts of India, of course, we know that a lot of the water is actually coming from the mountains, the glacial water. So the consumption pattern is also spatio-temporally heterogeneous, and it also varies from season to season. It varies from year across the years, as we will see in some of the slides ahead. Please go ahead now. So the total blue water, this is the source is Water Resource Institute, the total blue water across the world, and where you can see the deep dark blue, some of them are actually close to India as well. Greater than 100 square kilometers. Some of the regions are within India, but what you will see is that there is a wide distribution. And since this is a world map, if we had just the India map, which you'll see later on, where the heterogeneity is seen more clearly. Can we go to the next one, please? Now, this is the baseline water stress, again from the same source, published, I think, a few years back. Here, you see this is for the baseline. So seasonal and across the years, these values change. The stress level, so places where there is a stress of water. So as you saw in the previous one, we do have the blue areas, but we do also have a lot of the red ones, which also points out to the water consumption. The blue ones was only the water sources. Now here there is consumption. You have subtracted the consumption, and then you find the stresses. Can we go to the next one? Now, this is a beautiful example of how water table ratios are different, vary across the world. Now, what you should also appreciate, many people might not see this, but if you see this particular map, this map has some correction, has a projection system which makes sure that places around the equator are shown in the right size. In the previous map, for example, the sizes of the equator, the equatorial regions were shrunk down because of the projection system used by the northern hemisphere countries, or the countries that are on the northern, not on the equators. So this is an unbiased view of the world in terms of its real area. And you can see vast chunks of the world, especially around India. If you see, the groundwater levels are very low. And this again changes, and it gets recharged. It is a dynamic variable. Can we go to the next one, please? So this is the other aspect about water, which is coming from the atmosphere. Water is the hydrosphere. All our civil engineering folks will speak about the three spheres: cryosphere, hydrosphere, and cryosphere, hydrosphere, and the lithosphere. But this is atmosphere. So this is atmospheric precipitation. So as over time and space, spatio-temporal data, as we say. And let's go to the next one. This is the drainage, or this is what we call as the hydrosphere, and this is coming from the Dartmouth Flood Observatory, which has some amazing Earth observation data across the world. Since the data is so huge, this one is only for the Asia. It is divided into different parts of the world. The floods are monitored on real time. You have what we call as Earth observation data, and to some extent we also have analysis ready data coming from this observatory for almost across the world. Now the question is, what is the resolution at which we will be able to start using such data for decision ready indicators? And that is a more difficult question to answer. On the right hand side, you see some of the layers that I have chosen to show over here, and there are much more variables, but the question is, decisions are not made over one variable. So there are multiple decision ready information layers that are required, and many of these information don't sit together so nicely as we can see over here. There are many reasons why they don't sit together. Sometimes even if they sit on the map together, they are not supposed to sit on the map together because the data has been defined differently. We will see what that actually means in terms of different layers of semantic interoperability. But can we go to the next slide now? So water data sharing has already started, as you saw in the Dartmouth example. So this is a small little CIA report from 1997 about the CIS countries. So some of us who have lost their hair or are gray hairs remember that when the Soviet Union broke up, there was a Commonwealth of Independent States. And this is a report that went up all the way back. And the reason why I was fascinated with this is, if you look at the general conclusions here, you will see that it is recognized that the some of the things over here, complexities, the solutions must be considered with the complexity of the problem. And then if you see here, there is on the recommendation, plan and develop projects that demonstrate policy formulations, advantage of continuous water quality data collection, good information services, together with distribution and sharing of that data to end users. Now they have already recognized more than 20 years ago, especially because these independent states had to work separately by themselves. This is a very interesting document, but if we go to the next slide, this is what people are doing right now in the UK. So this is Utilities Week, which quoted the efforts in the UK of trying to share water data and hence transform the water sector. So what is most important here, again, there is the need of unified data standards and governance. And there is one place in the right hand side which says moving to a centralized, accessible, universal system. Now, I think this is very utopian, because centralized, accessible, universal, these are contradictory by themselves, because once it becomes centralized, access has to be controlled. So there is some area which probably can work in the UK, but in a bigger country like India, we may have to work with a heterogeneous and the possibility of having distributed system. But we will see to that next. This is the example from the United States. I have been fortunate to do some work with the Consortium of Universities for Advancement of Hydrologic Sciences, because they have two very beautiful programs. One is related to HydroShare, which enables discovery and sharing of time series data related to water, GIS data and models, and there are also some other information, but this is something that is used very widely in the water domain. And it is a relatively new effort. It has started, but now it is catching up. As I said, this is unprecedented. Not that US has been doing this for ages. It's something that has picked up now. Even people are still trying. The Hydrological Information System data portal, which I have used, provides access to nearly 100 data sources. Now the question is, how much of those data sources work interoperably? There are some which do. Go back, please. There are some which do, but it is not always easy to find out which ones. So last but not least is the Water ML, which is a package on it's a programming package using R, that uses R, and I've used that. So using that package, you can access and analyze data without having to download that data. This happens with, for example, genomic data, biological databases. This happens. So there are such interfaces, as we say, for analysis. Now with water, this is something that has happened new, and it is also something very exciting. Now we can go to the next. So this one is the last one, which is Australia. Now this in Australia, they this is the European one. The Australian one comes next. So Europe, there is under the JRC, Joint Research Council of there is a program called INSPIRE, for which even I've worked earlier, Infrastructure for Spatial Information in Europe. Now they have been long trying to integrate data sources, harmonize data, especially related to water. We will actually see a case study later on, which was funded by the JRC. And now this is more recent. This is WISE, for Water Information System for Europe, which is a gateway where all the data and issues, information gateway and problems, models, everything is discussed. They have been able to segregate, or they have been able to have separate programs for the marine information. They are very keen about that, and for the fresh water, which we count as drinking water in India. And basically in the European Parliament, there are particular directives that I've just listed over here. Some of the directives which are being used for funding research and interoperability within information systems related to water. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is the Australian one, and in the Australian system, this is very much similar to Indian WRIS, but something that they have tried to implement very well, and I think there are some lessons to be learned over there, is the conceptual framework under which they work. This is also a relatively new effort, very similar to our WRIS, but they have been focusing a lot on the conceptual framework so that interoperability can be achieved. It's not that they have achieved it, they are working towards it just like us, but there are some lessons to be learned in their experiments as well. Can we go next? So now we come to the next area, which is what are the frameworks of interoperability that we can use in sharing of water data. And I just wanted to go back a little bit and say, some time back, I used to work purely on interoperability of data. We did not work on geospatial data at that time. So in some sense, information systems, when we work on interoperability, what you have to remember is there are levels of interoperability. And if you can set up a framework under which you can resolve each type of interoperability by different mechanisms, it is possible to achieve some degree, but you have to quantify what is the level of interoperability when you start, and then after you have solved some of the issues where you have achieved. So it is very important to quantify all these things. Otherwise, this becomes very subjective discussions. So I will take one example. This is something that comes up very often: the structural and syntactic interoperability of data. Now I'll take one example over here. This is the soil data. So on the left hand side, the blue box speaks about soil depth, texture, class, and mean soil carbon density. Now this is coming from the NRSC data for soil from Earth observation. This is a very valuable data set from the from ISRO, from NRSC, and it's also used by a lot of agriculture people. On the right hand side is actually the soil health card that is so valuable right now, where you measure the different parameters, the health of the soil in terms of the macronutrients, the secondary nutrients, micronutrients. Now, what is important is these two data sets. The left side one comes usually as a raster data set. The right one comes usually as a vector. So it is a point data. At a point, we know these soil health parameters. On the left side, what you get is actually the information across a region, basically from a satellite image you have observed, and you have analyzed and found these three variables. Now these are variables, these are numbers that need to be looked together to make a decision. But it is relatively difficult because the structure of the data typically is not same or consistent. It can be made. There is some extra effort required, and that is what I want to point out, that structural and syntactic interoperability can be achieved with a little bit of extra effort. So this is first one level of interoperability. Can we go to the next one? The next level of interoperability is relatively a little more difficult and not always possible to resolve. So for example, on the left hand side, what you see is, I think all of us will agree, it is drinking water. Now the one on the top is actually spring water, whereas the one on the bottom is tap water. Both are examples of what we call as drinking water. Now conceptually, are they same? In a system, for example, where drinking water is only metered, and spring water, as we know, cannot be metered. You will only monitor after people have drawn so much of spring water. So conceptually, they might not be the same. So in a city distribution environment, a spring water will not be considered as the same as the drinking water that is supplied to the city. So, the conceptual difference is what is semantic interoperability. What do you mean? And I have spent a lot of time in geospatial ontologies trying to define or specify what do you mean by certain data sets. And the ability to specify what you mean in unambiguous terms will be the tool to ensure you can translate it, or you can work with other data sets as well. So on the right hand side, if you see, there is something that we have already spoken about, how water is used across different domains: sanitation, supply, and you see the same water is known with different names. So rain becomes groundwater, then it becomes surface water, or sometimes it's surface water becomes groundwater. There is treatment of the water once it is treated. So the water remains the same, but conceptually it has become a different entity. now it will be entered into a system differently. A major challenge over here is to reconcile with the fact that groundwater is relatively has an extensive data information system environment headed by the Central Groundwater Board in India and surface water with the river and surface water agencies, that reservoirs and water resource departments. Now, of course, when we come to water harvesting, it merges the two, and National Water Mission, as Ashokji says, it deals with both. It deals with everything. So that semantic interoperability is very, very critical to achieve when we are speaking about saving and using all the water that we get. Can we go to the next slide? So again, just to recap, interoperability, you can resolve one at a time. It is better to, technical interoperability is the easiest one to resolve. Suppose you are using Windows system, Linux system, you can resolve those differences, not a problem. Some years back, people spoke about open systems and legacy systems. All those are over now. Everything is open systems. Syntactic interoperability is what is data formats. So that since the 2000, at least in the geospatial and other domains as well, with the advent of XML and other standard data exchange formats, the syntactic interoperability requires some effort, but not too much. Semantic interoperability, on the other hand, requires thought, specification, and it can be achieved in most cases. Organizational interoperability is when within my organization, I work a certain way. This is the ISO standard I deal with, and another organization has its own set of ISO standards and they comply with that. They are doing perfectly well. But when you want two organizations to work together, that level of interoperability challenges is what you have to face. And this, I think, is also reflected in the national in the Department of IT, I think National e-governance, I think, where they have a similar model. I think in 2015 they have established the interoperability models for e-governance as well, with these same 4 factors. On the left hand side is something that I wanted to point out, comes from the Open Geospatial Consortium, which I want to introduce right now. Is a consortium of all, or at least most of the organizations that work with geospatial data across the world. They are based out of the US. They have an Indian presence as well. Many Indian organizations are member of these Open Geospatial Consortium. Now, their focus is interoperability, and they have a program. They not only do standards, and we will see some of the standards later on, but they also focus on establishing interoperability by a agile innovation process, which is where you do iterative experiments until you achieve an interoperability objective or a goal. Now, this is something that is done by OGC. We will discuss this a little later again. Can we go next? So water standards, there is, as I was just saying, almost 1200 ISO standards are there in all different aspects of water data, and many agencies do amazing work. There is this HEUK framework where people think that you should be able to use this HEUK framework to resolve or to address data interoperability in, I think this is general, but also in water, I think. So what you want to do is homogenize. So you want to have shared vocabularies. Now this one says common vocabularies. This does not always happen. You can have a shared vocabulary. Then you share data across platforms. The more you share, the more interoperability, there is more encouragement for interoperability. Then there is the aspect of knowledge graphs, which does away with the idea of having a structured data table names, what I call this table, what I call this attribute. So for example, the data.gov website, the India DataGov portal has a huge knowledge graph which has been exported, and people use it for multiple things. Unfortunately, though, the normal people or the people who use information are not expert in using knowledge graphs as sources of information. So they need some kind of an interface which will be able to extract or search in the knowledge graph data. Then, of course, it is also very important to share your use cases, define and elaborate, say, this is what I want to do, this is what I do with my data, this is what it is. So that is a better way of specifying what data it is, rather than trying to write long descriptive text. So those are the four ways of promoting interoperability. Then on the right hand side, you see um, a, a table of different data standards regarding water. So water data catalogs, water data as a service. So this is in the US, I think, more or less, where they have implemented some of these standards, and some of them standards have not been. So when you see a number 3, it is already like it is it is getting implemented, or it has got implemented. And on the left hand side bottom, you have a list of OGC, as I said, Open Geospatial Consortium, list of water data related standards that OGC uses. The advantage about this is, these are very specific standards that have evolved out of interoperability experiments. So some of them, I think, even in India, we can start using very easily. So for example, SensorWeb, I think we have already used in many other projects in India, observation and measurement, O&M. So we will see this a little bit in a little bit more detail. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is the OGC. I'm not going to explain the whole slide, and I don't expect you to read this slide right now. But if you are able to look up water markup language, water ML is a standard which has now been adopted in many places. And why I think this is exciting, because it shares a schema or a conceptual model. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, this is a conceptual model, and if you see here, there is a groundwater. This is for groundwater markup language, and you see the conceptual model is very well thought out. So if anybody who has worked with groundwater, there is water ML for surface water. So you can see what this concept is, and you can see how each of the data sets that you have either um, um, belong to one of these concepts, or if you have a new concept, you can define that concept, and hence you can refer to a standard water data standard which can be shared across the world, at least across in India. Let's go ahead next. So if I've not bored you already with some technical stuff, I want to do some case studies that should excite you. There are 3 case studies, and the first one comes back from 2009, when the GIC lab was established, and we were given some data related to the Ganga basin. I don't think anybody will be able to see that this is actually the Ganga entering Uttar Pradesh. Other than that, there is the name of the layer, Ganga 99 and Ganga 89. So 8990 and Ganga 99 2K. And you can see already there are differences. And I want you to appreciate that this is something that they wanted us to have a look. And at that time, they were facing a problem of syntactic interoperability, because some of the data was coming in different formats. Most of the data was in what we call as ArcGIS proprietary format. And there was a challenge in actually the putting the layers on top of each other because of the problems in projection systems. So we did work with them, and we saw that most of the problems, at least in the Ganga Basin project, were rather syntactic in nature. They were not so much semantic in nature. But I asked the question recently when we had all the DVDs of data, CDs of the data, and DVDs also that we recorded. And I asked the question, if I were to try to see the semantic issues over here, we had no clue, we had no specification of the concepts, and hence I think now if I look at Namami Gange and the river, now we doing a way better job of specifying what these tables represent, and hence we will be able to resolve. But at that level, at that time, semantic interoperability was very difficult to achieve. Can we go to the next one, please? This is relatively, we are jumping to 2019 and 2020, more recent, and this is related to a project where the GIC lab is very closely involved on program on climate resilient agriculture. And here, what we do is look at water data at a very microscopic level. The smallest community can go, and this is for a village. So on the right hand side, what you see is a study result of the study for the water balance in the Paradgaon village in Jalna, I think. In the taluka, it's up there. So this data is available on the Pokhara website itself, and what you see is a lot of the result of a lot of analysis. So this is the how much of water came in the area, how much was runoff, one was how much was transmission loss, evapotranspiration, how much was return flow, how much was runoff outflow. So this water balance data was very duly created after analysis, and it assimilated a lot of data sources. And while we were doing that, we looked at the MRSAC data and the National Soil Survey data, the two tables, the table that you see on the top, and you can see that some of the same variables have different values, and we had to reconcile, we had to physically reconcile each of those values. Now, a problem with geospatial data is, in the famous word of a famous scientist, Michael Goodchild, the geospatial data comes with a level of uncertainty, and it is important to quantify that, especially when the scale of that data. So MRSAC is usually satellite data, Earth observation data, which of course now it is very high resolution, but we don't know what resolution this data has been collected. So how reliable it is, the uncertainty associated with that data, whereas National Soil Survey is a point-based data. Again, we don't know how dense those survey points are, and hence how reliable or how much less the uncertainty is, and which one of the two we should be choosing. So we had to actually go and do our own surveys to choose which one we had to use. So this is the next one, please. This is again, this is way back in 2003. And when I first started working on interoperability with geospatial data in Germany, and the reason why I took this up as a use case, because many times people compare India to Europe because we have states, boundaries, and we have data, one river flowing into another state, and then there are floods. This is an example where the Elbe River, which flows across multiple countries, actually had a lot of floods in 2000, I think before 2003. So they spent a lot of money trying to set up sensors and information systems that could monitor if there was a flood. Now, the problem they faced was all these countries have different languages and different systems, and hence their systems wouldn't work together. So after a lot of research, there were the idea of having a interface across what we call, what many of our geospatial people would recognize as a web feature service. So the interfaces were developed which was independent of the language, and hence it was data was shared across countries, and they were able to achieve at that time what was called as service chaining of different web services, so that you can end up with the analysis. Of course, the terminology has changed over the years. Now we have cloud technologies, and the chaining happens through S3 buckets now, but the idea is the same: specify, interface, and chain. So can we go to the next one? So after seeing so many things, I want to come to a point where we want to look at the crystal and think what are the things that can happen in the future. And I think I can't disagree with Professor Gosen and from IIT Delhi, where he says that unfortunately there is no such provision for hydrology data exchange within the Indian community. Moreover, these standards somehow fail in providing powerful communication of the spatial hydrological data. Their study, this paper, investigates the shortcomings of the existing industry standards and demonstrates a set of requirements for effective exchange of the hydrological information in the Indian scenario. Now, I want to put a little caveat here that, of course, this is coming from a professor of hydrology. So there is also, if you remember, at the atmosphere, hydrosphere, cryosphere, and the underground, so let's say lithosphere. So we have to combine that for data exchange. Can we go to the next one? And one opportunity exists in terms of the Open Geospatial Consortium's innovation program, under which we can try, there are different ways of trying to achieve interoperability with small iterative incremental experiments to see what works and what doesn't. And that is my proposition, that we start to quantify the level of interoperability that exists right now in sharing data. I know that certain organizations like CGWB and I think the river department also works with the National Spatial Data Infrastructure and shares its data. The WRIS also shares its data in the National Spatial Data Infrastructure. But I think sharing the data and it getting used, there are two different factors. So to actually use it, we have to do some experiments and see where are the bottlenecks. And can we go to the next slide, please? So this is my proposition for the crystal gaze. We would like to see, and I think the academic, the research community, I think also the Association of Geospatial Industry, the OGC, everybody is excited that India does have the vision to move forward and look at all these different data sets that have been organizationally different, not only syntactically, semantically, also organizationally different houses. They will come together under the National Water Mission. That is our vision. That is something that we think is what we look at the crystal and say, maybe in the next 10 years we will, or next 5 years, we will be able to achieve, the level of interoperability where all this data will work each other. And if I want to work at a local government level or at the central level, I have the comfort of working without wondering, will it actually work together, or will I have to start from scratch? So I will stop here, because I think I have a nice quote from Chanakya, which I'll let you read. But the point is we can have more questions and discussions.
Thanks, Dr. Sumit. It was a very highly technical discussion which we have done. And I'm sure people who have been handling data would be asking a lot of questions on it. As you rightly mentioned, India, the water had been operating in silos. The urban sector and rural sector, whenever used to exchange data, the surface water and groundwater had a problem with exchanging data. States-wide had a problem of exchanging data. And flood management, all this requires a very, very understanding of on a scientific basis. It requires a lot of understanding on and also the exchange of information between various parts of the country. Probably, as you rightly mentioned, the effort which the NWSAIC started, because they also had we started the separate WRS, and they are now going to platform on the WYC. So they are trying to get all this information on a platform and disseminate to the people concerned. We are also talking about better flood management using the data, the prediction of rainfall, and also using those data at a micro level for giving information to the farmers what sort of crops should grow and when is the rainfall coming in, what's the type of irrigation they should do it. All these requires a very um, thorough and very deep learning, particularly, and also very strong fundamentals of data. I mean, data management. And it's so interesting that we are now slowly beginning to realize that it's very important. Water, surface water, the hydrometeorological data, again on the water quality aspect, not only the quantity, the quality aspect, the issues where there's wastewater issues, all these are coming up in a big way. So hopefully that things will improve, and we look forward for your guidance and all your experiences in handling. Now it's open for questions because I'm really impressed with the complexity is there, but I hope that we will be able to resolve the complexity and get into a very informed decision.
So now we are officially open for the question answer session. And for all those who have joined us for the first time, I would like to quickly introduce you with the format. One, we are live through social media as well, like Facebook and LinkedIn as well. So if you have any query, you can write it there as well. And all those who are inside this program and you have an option of raising your hand, you raise your hand and my team will unblock you and maybe unmute you, and maybe you can introduce yourself and put forward your query. Apart from that, you can also write your query in the chat box and take it up as well as comments. So now we are officially open. Kindly raise your hand or write in the chat box.
I request Dr. Dharamveer Thareja, you may please ask your query.
Thank you, Dr. Sen. It was very informative. A lot of new terminologies, even for a water source professional. I was trying to have some basic understanding, but the interesting part I found was that you projected two very good slides. One was on the consortium of University for Advancement of Hydrologic, and another was on German flooding. If you can explain a little bit more so that we can start thinking in that direction, how to draw the best out of these two cases. That will be further interesting and educative for water resource professionals like me.
Thank you so much. I think I will start with the second question because it's very dear to me, and I think flood management, where especially natural boundaries don't really coincide with administrative boundaries. The important thing is to understand what is going on in terms of much of the floods. I will not speak about some other events like cloudbursts, which you don't get much headway, but much of floods do give you a lot of time, and in fact every year we miss out on the opportunity of knowing or describing what that event is going to do. Now, what also is important is recognize that in India and around the world, the flood basins are the places where you will have most of the population. So there is a vulnerability. Now, the question is, how do you quantify this risk? In fact, right now we are in the midst of disaster management pilot, where we have the same question. that we tried to answer during the German floods last year. And we all know this year Germany had very bad floods where people died. The problem is data sharing, but also the problem is conversion of that data into a decision ready information where people can take action. That is the problem where we face, and it is not the easiest thing to do, but unless you have, and that combines the second question, you need small players, universities, university consortiums, because I have previously worked in a university consortium where small components were developed by the local colleges, and where you put up your own sensors and you make sure those sensors are working, and hence you are able to understand what is going on. From Earth observation point of view, you can always get Earth observation data, which will tell you, like the Dartmouth Flood Observatory, it can tell you at certain level, but whether water will come up to my house at what level, do I have to evacuate, and when I have to evacuate, when I have to do that. All those information will come from very microscopic data where local colleges, local academic institutions, and we are trying to evolve our geospatial hub lab over here into a hub, in a hub and spoke model, where we should be able to introduce some of these expertise or some of these knowledge into institutions and evolve such hub and spoke models. I think your institute also can do similar things. That is where, when universities will come together, the data sharing models, some of them are already there. It's not that we have to reinvent the wheel, but we can also look at very specific. For example, in India, the data is very dense, the spatial data. So what happens is we need relatively higher resolution data. We don't have that. So we will have to work on those things, but there is a path forward. I hope I've answered your question.
There is one query by Dr. Dilip Kumar, who says water management today is much related to real data. We have very poor framework for real-time data collection and sharing. So looking forward to your inputs to improve the data.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I think real-time data sharing is always a challenge. It is not just in India. It is a challenge everywhere. There are two kinds of real-time data. One comes from Earth observation, which is remotely sensed. Sometimes you fly drones and there are other things. The other, there are other two categories. One category is that of sensors, which are sensor webs. These are relatively expensive and difficult to maintain, and most places, even we are trying to work with some governmental agencies also in certain projects. Most cases, real-time governments and agencies are relatively hesitant to give the data. What they are able to give you is an archive of the data, because they are comfortable that there's there's no missing data or something like that. But real-time data, and this is not just India, everywhere real-time is a challenge, because also there it is difficult to keep the data alive, the sensors alive, giving right values, correcting it. But the second part of that question is, we are also trying to encourage the platform for open data. Now, this is relatively new in India. We are trying to encourage a platform for open data, and we hope that we will start a registry of all such real-time data. There are some data sets that are real-time right now. In fact, in COIS, there are many data sets that are real-time available to the general public. Reservoir data, some of them are live available. But we hope that the open data community will grow, and hopefully that will address. But I agree that it is not as where we want it to be right now.
Rightly said Dr. Sen, and in fact, to be honest, we all do acknowledge that there is a need of data management, and it's a very important part of the overall study, research, or anything. However, still there is not much clarity about how to go about it, what should be the overall structure, and that's why I think maybe today we do not have much queries also, because this is relatively a topic which we are all perceiving more. So if there is any further query, please put it forward, and we have our expert here who will be happy to answer and take up the queries.
Okay, I think I will wait for queries to come up. See, the problem, somebody was asking about the real-time data. In fact, the problem with India and with water is very, very complex. We are starting from the collection of data itself. We have a issue of getting the data collected, not even in the real time, in getting it collected from various groundwater wells and all to come across, the groundwater levels, which we keep on talking every time. The data is published once in 3 years. It's not in the real time. Now we have published the 2017 or 18 data on the water levels in various parts of the country. So the requirement of standardizing the water collection procedures, water collection of data itself is a major challenge. Transferring the data in a proper technical language throughout the country and to a common database is another great challenge in India. And as Sen was telling, many states have hesitancy in sharing of data, thinking it is very, very politically sensitive, or fights between states have started sharing of water. When we were actually doing the National Water Mission, when we are doing the state-specific action plan, water budgeting for each state, generally we realize how difficult it was to get data, whether it's from IMD to get the default pattern or getting data of the water flow in the various rivers and all. Many times its approximations come. Many times they don't share the data, or sometimes it is very old data which is given. So it is a very, very complex situation in India of the data management, particularly in the water sector. You see, I find that in the power sector and all, the data is very much available because of the very fundamental fact that power can be easily measured and metered. The problem with water is water has multiple point sources. So if you take a field, if you have water pumping the water from the underground, there is one water connection for electric meter, and a quantity of electricity used can be measured by measuring the or connecting it serially to the wire which consumes the power. But in case of water, it's very difficult. In a field, also you get multiple sources of data is available. Water sources are available, and measuring and metering itself has to be clearly evolved in many places. So there are challenges in measuring the data itself. That's one very important aspect here. Second, water has a different aspects also. The quality aspect is there, the quantity aspect is there. That is another big challenge. So with all these things, we have actually a big challenge ahead of us in formalizing appropriate data management structure. Maybe, I don't know. Okay, so this is what I feel, because this is what I've been interacting with very people, and the very fact that it's like an open black box for us many times. So tell me about it.
So I just wanted to add one more point. I think this is a suggestion. I have realized in all countries, wherever organizations, not just countries, organizations, wherever there is this question of we want, it is sometimes useful to have a nodal person like a GIO, CIO, or Geographic Information Officer. So what happens is once you assign responsibility to that person, maybe it is a very difficult task, you want to shorten his load, but if you assign that responsibility, that becomes a mission mode for that person. So generally, I've observed that if you have a GIO, for example, within the what different silos that we have, if you have one GIO, it makes easier to, rather than everybody talking to everybody else, having a GIO is usually works better.
Great. So now that's why in the district level, Casual campaign, we are focusing along with the construction of rainwater harvesting, catching as much rainwater as possible. Also trying to the crowdsourcing of information of the water bodies. That itself is a major challenge because we still do not have an exact number of water bodies in harvesting structures. Keep on having different numbers coming up every time when it's get a very at least to a large extent accurate database. We are trying to do a crowdsourcing of database and think on that, and hopefully we'll get a very at least very high degree of accuracy, and then start for a scientific planning. That's what we are looking at it. I don't know how far we will be succeeding, but it's an attempt which we have made. We are also trying to satellite imagery techniques also to get these details, and then overlay with the soil structure and etc. to plan for the appropriate rainwater harvesting structures. This is a long-term vision, but the data itself is a major problem because when I remember when we were in the water supply boards, the water metering was a very major challenge that time because of the different types of meters which we are using and the claims from the users, and there's a fundamental resistance of these are all not only technological issues, these are all issues in the ground. So much of issues which we face. Anyway, it was a very interesting topic, and hopefully people will understand the importance of data and correct data. And as I mentioned, unless we measure something, we will not be able to monitor it. And monitor it will not be able to end of our is to increase the water use efficiency, the management of water. Because every time we keep on saying that India has a lot of available, especially it's a variation, but sufficient water is available, and their problem is on the head of the proper water management. To have a proper water management, we should have a informed decision. Have an informed decision making. We should have data, and that's where the whole challenge comes in. So hopefully, guidance of people like you and experts and the best practices from various parts of the world. Scientifically data-based budgeting at the district level and state level done with the help of people so that what is. Thanks a lot, Sunil. I request Sunil, advisor in National Water Mission, to.
Sir. A very good afternoon to all of you, and a very happy Chaturthi. I hope you all must have enjoyed this session of Water Tech Talk, as well as the experiences shared by the speaker, Dr. Sumit Sen, senior scientist at IIT Mumbai, which is my alma mater also. On behalf of National Water Mission, I extend a very hearty thanks to all of you for sparing your valuable time out of your busy schedule for attending this 12th Water Tech Talk. We are really grateful to our Additional Secretary and Mission Director for his able guidance, which has always encouraged us for organizing Water Tech Talk series. He is the driving force behind this talk series. About Dr. Sumit Sen, he has vast experience on geospatial ontologies, data integration, and spatial data infrastructures. Ontology means part of philosophy that studies what it means to exist. He had completed his master's at the City University London and has worked as a researcher with IIT Mumbai, University of Munster, Keio University, Chubu University. He is currently a consultant for Genesis International and SKM University. I owe special gratitude and sincere thanks to our special guest speaker, who, despite his busy schedule, found time to enlighten us about spatial data infrastructure and prevailing standards for sharing of water-related geospatial data. His presentation brings out the main knowledge gaps in data sharing, and he presented 3 specific case studies to explore the limitations of data sharing across applications and organizations. He has explained the deep technical things in a very, very simple manner, like an experienced professor. Also, there were discussion with delegates. I can say that with today's discussion between Dr. Sumit Sen and the delegate, we can vouch that this Water Talk has become a platform for discussion on technical matters of water, which was the basic aim of starting this Water Tech Talk series by National Water Mission. We are lucky enough to get knowledge on how interoperability can be achieved through iterative processes and experiments from such an experienced scholars. I also express heartfelt thanks to all of the attendees for joining this session of Water Tech Talk on virtual platform and had a patient hearing to our speaker to make this event wonderful and successful. I also convey my sincere thanks to Team Water Digest and Team National Water Mission for giving their wholeheartedly support in organizing this Water Tech Talk. Thanks to all of you again, including attendees, for making this Water Tech Talk a resounding success. For the info of all, I want to convey that National Water Mission is organizing Water Tech Talk on 2nd Friday of every month and Water Talk on 3rd Friday of every month. National Water Mission requests everybody present here to participate in these talks and share the knowledge of distinguished speakers in the field of water. See you in the coming episode of Water Talk to be held on 17th of September. That is again on IDSC Day. This is also the raising day of my cadre, IDSC, Indian Defence Service of Engineers. Till then, goodbye, take care and stay safe. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Sunil ji, and thank you, Dr. Sen. Thank you, Ashok ji, and all the lovely participants who participated in this Water Tech Talk and are also watching us live through various social media handles. So like Sunil ji mentioned, we see you soon next Friday for the Water Talk, interesting Water Talk. So till then, take care and have a wonderful evening ahead. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.